Hello everyone, the topic of our group is Contemporary Challenges of Globalization and International Business. The globalization and international business has become an increasingly significant reality worldwide. In 2008, the global trade in goods and services reached 25% of world GDP, while in terms of manufactured goods, international trade has multiplied by more than 100 times since 1955. The rise of globalization poses a number of important challenges to a business seeking international presence. This presentation seeks to identify the main challenges affecting international businesses, including cultural issues, strategy choice, and political risk. And we are going to divide this presentation into four aspects. The first one is what's a globalization and international business. The second part is challenges of globalization, and the third one is challenges of international business in globalization, and the last one is conclusion.
Globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations, brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Countries have built economic partnerships to facilitate these movements over many centuries, but the term gained popularity after the Cold War in the early 1990s, as these cooperative arrangements shaped modern everyday life. This guide uses the term more narrowly to refer to international trade and some of the investment flows among advanced economies, mostly focusing on the United States. The wide-ranging effects of globalization are complex and politically charged. As with major technological advances, globalization benefits society as a whole, while harming certain groups. Understanding the relative costs and benefits can pave the way for alleviating problems while sustaining the wider payoffs. And international business refers to the trade of goods, services, technology, capital, and knowledge across national borders and at a global or transnational level. It involves cross-border transactions of goods and services between two or more countries. Transactions of economic resources include capital, skills, and people for the purpose of the international production of physical goods and services such as finance, banking, insurance, and construction. International business is also known as globalization.
Okay, let's get started of the changes of globalization. Although globalization is helpful in many ways, there also have some challenges needed to solve it. I will talk about some of these challenges. The first one is job mobility. It means promotions and career advancement, or a change in job role that benefits the employee's career growth. In some developed countries, if someone is a lower skilled worker and loses his job, it will be very difficult to find a new job. It will make the unemployment rate increase. Then the job mobility will influence the social welfare of these countries. The second challenge is Western dominance. The economy of Western has long been ahead of the Eastern. So, although globalization helps countries collecting more clothes, the Western developed world still holds the region on international order and how capital flows from country to country. Loss of cultural identity is the last challenge of globalization that our group has identified. Every country has its own culture. While globalization enables countries to conduct cultural exchange, it will gradually lead to the loss of some cultures, then the success of certain cultures throughout the world have caused other cultures to emulate these lifestyles and culture. When cultures begin to lose their distinctive features, we lose our global diversity. Thanks.
Political risk was defined by Wells as the challenges faced by investors that result from some sort of government action and sometimes inaction. Political risk implies negative business consequences due to the behavior of governments and public sector organizations. The most important political risk has been the threat of nationalization. The extreme threat of nationalization sometimes takes milder forms as when, in times of crisis, some governments resort to exchange rate controls. Another source of political risk are wars or civil strife. However, Jones observes that dramatic events such as wars, assassinations, and sequestrations are rare in the international business arena. Another important political risk is represented by corruption practices. For instance, a company may lose a contract because of a government's unethical dealings. To mitigate this risk, Transparency International has created a corruption index that can be available to all interested. As a company's international presence increases, often a multi-domestic or localization strategy develops. Under this strategy, the company set up subsidiaries in several countries, which tend to operate independently from each other and often relatively independently from the headquarters. This type of strategy emphasizes local responsiveness, but this is often achieved at the expense of cost and possibly quality. When MNEs grows in size, they could reach a level where global standardization strategy may be a strategic choice. The global strategy was promoted by Levitt, who considered that globalization naturally results in uniformity of consumer taste. In this framework, a company could achieve significant economies of scale by producing the same standard product at a global level. In addition to the global trade solution, many large MNEs with significant international presence may choose a transnational trade approach. This was the first introduced by Ballard and Gauchel, and differs from the global trade in that transnational companies tend to produce localized products that employ global expertise, technology, and resources.
Identify the main dimensions of culture that affect work practices in different countries. Power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism vs collectivism, masculinity vs femininity, long-term vs short-term orientation. In a national culture framework, large power distance can translate into potential corruptive practices. Takia Asidou associated power distance to corruption in sub-Saharan Africa. Cohen, Pant, and Sharp also found that high power distance culture people tend to view unethical practices as acceptable. Uncertainty avoiding countries tend to have solid legal frameworks and strict rules of doing business. In such countries, the rule editing tends to be carried out to ascertain compliance with rules. These countries tend to have uniform accounting procedures and low disclosure levels. Coming from a different cultural perspective, an international business may find it costly to adapt to national standards and rules of the country it wishes to do. Paradoxically, uncertainty avoidance can also translate into unethical practices as persons seek to secure a more certain result through corruption. In terms of entry modes into the country, businesses may find that uncertainty avoidance countries favor solid frameworks, such as established subsidiaries or local ownership, which are more costly and risky. Individualism vs collectivism is an important aspect that influences the costs of business. For instance, Hofstede has found an important correlation between software piracy and individualism crittering. Collectivism has been associated with unethical behavior and corruption. Masculinity vs femininity also tend to influence business costs. For instance, high masculine cultures have been associated with unethical practices. Feminine cultures could result in higher secrecy and conservatism in accounting and finance. Apart from hostess aspect, religion has an important impact on doing business. For instance, Islamic culture encourages private enterprise and the right to private property. This implies that doing business in Islamic culture may have reduced political risks, whose prevention can become costly.
Well, in a nutshell, doing business internationally presents far greater challenges to local activity. The complexity of playing at the global level presents companies with different difficulties and choices, many of which are not straightforward. However, the way forward implies a careful strategic analysis and a strong cultural sensitivity in order to take advantage of global opportunities. And that's all. Thank you for your listening.